My brother had a secret crush on my wife since school. He even brought my ex to my wedding to stop me from marrying her. So I told his pregnant girlfriend that he was cheating on her. This is going to be a long read, so bear with me. I am 27 and I have a younger brother. Let's call him Jake. Jake and I have been the closest brothers and we've had a very normal sibling relationship. Or so I thought. Maybe I was oblivious to what was going on. Or maybe he was really good at hiding his true emotions. This story also involves my ex-girlfriend Ruth, who is 27, and my now wife Zara, who is 24. Jake, Zara, and I went to the same school. I was a couple of years older than them, so I never interacted much with Zara. I knew Jake and all of his friends and we played together at times, but that was the extent of our interaction. By the time I reached my junior year, Jake and I started growing apart a little because we had very different interests. I kind of figured that something like this would happen and that it was a natural outcome of growing up, so I didn't really push for a close relationship with him. We did hang out occasionally, but we didn't share secrets. That's not really something boys do. So it didn't bother me much either. The only thing of significance to this story is that while I was about to leave for college, Jake was hanging around with a couple of his friends and their girlfriends. One of them was Zara. Before you start accusing me of being a creep or a groomer for going after a 15-year-old, I want to make it clear that nothing of that sort happened. I met all the kids over there, and one of them asked me where I was going to college. When I told them, Zara chimed in that it was her dream university. I just said that she was more than welcome to ask for my help when she applied. That was it. I had no intention of pursuing anything further. I didn't see her again until I went off to college. I forgot all about that little interaction because it was inconsequential. I met Ruth, who was in the same class as me. We got on really well and it took me a while to ask her out. I finally did so in my third year of college. She said yes and we started dating at the beginning of the relationship. Everything was great. We understood each other well because we were struggling with similar things and wanted a similar life for ourselves. I really understood her. I got a well-paying job right out of college, but Ruth didn't. I was happy to help her out and we decided to move in together to save costs. She was applying for jobs left, right and center, but somehow even after making it to the interview stage, she never got accepted. I knew this was taking a mental toll on her, and while I did earn enough for the two of us, it was still difficult to save much because it was so early on in my career. She spent over a year applying to different places but got nowhere. It was really tough for her. I tried to be as supportive as I could, but she soon realized we could live comfortably on my income alone and stopped trying. I thought she was just exhausted from applying and getting rejected, so I was happy for her to take a break and do things she enjoyed. After 3 or 4 months, she was happier, less stressed, and in a much better mental state than before. I was happy for her. I thought I'd gently nudge her to start looking for jobs again in the next few weeks. A month later, I brought up the topic again, but she had a very bad reaction to it. She said that just the mere mention of going through that harrowing process again was enough to make her cry. She told me not to bring it up again. She said she'd start applying when she was ready. I trusted her and didn't want to pressure her or come off as unsupportive, so I agreed 2 years after I got my job. I got a promotion with a significant raise, which I was overjoyed about because now I could finally start saving and doing things I enjoyed for the last 2 years. I had to put many of my desires on hold to support 2 people on my income, coupled with Ruth's mental health struggles, my hobbies took a back seat. I was relieved that I could now have some money to enjoy myself. However, the minute Ruth found out that I had received a raise, she started begging me to help fund her niece's education. Ruth's brother was broke and could never hold a job for more than a couple of months. He had gotten a woman pregnant and had no idea. The issue was that the woman died, leaving no family. So the child went to Ruth's brother, and he was unequipped. Ruth asked me to help her niece with something. She said she loved her niece and that she would never forgive herself if she couldn't help her out. I didn't know how I could help, as I'd only met her niece twice. I told her I'd think about it and left it at that. Part of me was willing to help, but another part of me thought that it was her niece's responsibility to get up and pick up a job. Any Joe Blogs helped her out. I drank a lot that night. And as I kept drinking, all the rationale and logic that I had buried in my mind suddenly came rushing to the surface. I had always suspected that Ruth was trying to leech off of me. But I never gave much weight to those thoughts. Because I was in love with her. However, I couldn't shake those feelings anymore. I was funding her entire life, which I was happy to do. But to expect me to fund her niece the minute I got a raise, especially at the cost of what I wanted for myself, which seemed a bit much. I knew it was time to take a stand for myself, because if I started funding the niece now, I'd never be able to get out of it for the rest of my life. The next day, I sat Ruth down and told her that I would not be funding her niece, no matter how dear the circumstances. I also told her that if she felt bad for the poor kid, she was more than welcome to pick. I suggested she get a job and help out, but she said it was my money and she could do what she wanted with it. She tried to interject, saying I was being cruel and that an unfortunate child needed my help, but I wasn't having any of it. I also told her that if she wasn't going to get a job, the division of household chores was going to change. We had no kids or pets, so I expected her to pick up 80% of the chores. I told her that I'd worked hard for the last 2 years, juggling work and home and supporting her, but now I needed a break. If she wasn't willing to support me monetarily, so that I could have more money for myself, then she had to help take some of the workload off me. To say that she started yelling would be an understatement. I don't think I've ever had the unfortunate experience of listening to such a tirade. She was shouting at the top of her voice. I was amazed that I didn't leave the conversation with my ears bleeding. During her long tirade, she called me every name in the book. She was being manipulative, gaslighting me, financially abusive and misogynistic. You name it. But to me, I just needed a break. Why were we even partners if she couldn't do this for me? The fight went on for a long time. I think she believed I would give in because I've always been non-confrontational. To her surprise, we were at a standstill for a few more days when I tried to revisit the topic, but she shut me down again. That's when I knew we were done. There was no future for me in this relationship, where I was subsidizing her life and getting nothing in return. The breakup was ugly. She didn't have anywhere to go because she didn't have a job. I told her that I was willing to give her some money to sustain herself. I gave her a couple of months, but by then she should have her situation figured out because I was done. She started crying, saying I was bluffing and pulling the entire drama routine. I told her that I wasn't interested in this relationship anymore and my decision was final. There was no way to salvage it. All the remedies she was suggesting now should have come to her while we were still together, not as a last resort. Despite me setting her up for a couple of months, the breakup was still pretty ugly. It was only after she moved out that I realized just how much dead weight I had been carrying. I had so much time and energy to devote to myself. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned back in school. It was through these hobbies that I reconnected with Zara, who didn't go to my college but ended up pursuing painting in the arts as a profession. I had always enjoyed doodling as a kid, even though it was kind of a secret. I had always enjoyed doodling as a kid, but it wasn't considered masculine enough. Well, there was an art exhibition in my city, and I went out of curiosity. That's where I found Zara. She had put up a piece in the exhibition, and we got to talking. This was a few months after my breakup with Ruth. I asked Zara how everything was going, and we made small talk, which we both enjoyed. We decided to meet up again, and she promised to let me know if there were any other art events in town. She did. We meet up again. We slowly started falling for each other. It took me a year to ask her out. By then I was already madly in love with her. I tried asking Jacob about her. He said they hadn't been in contact ever since she broke up with the guy from his friend group back in school. I won't go into all the details of my relationship with Zara because it's not relevant to this story. Just know that it's always been we had a great, equal partnership. I knew pretty early on that she was the one I wanted to marry. During this time, Ruth tried to get in touch with me a couple of times, but I always rebuffed her. Zara was always aware of this whenever it happened and she was secure enough to not doubt me. I introduced Zara to my family over dinner a year into our relationship, and by this time we had already started contemplating marriage. My parents don't interfere in their kids' personal affairs, so that was never an issue. It was a good dinner, and Zara got along well with my family. We were all talking about how funny it was that life works in mysterious ways and how it was pure chance that I bumped into Zara again. It was then that Jake quipped that he couldn't believe his middle school crush was going to be his sister-in-law. It seemed like a light-hearted joke at the time, and everyone present took it that way. Zara even said that Jake was the only guy in their group who was remotely interesting to talk to. It was a fun dinner, and I didn't think much of Jake's comment. He seemed really happy for me too. I had no idea he'd been harboring feelings for Zara all these years, even though he'd been in multiple relationships. The issues started during the wedding planning. At the time, I never would have thought my own brother would do something like this. It was little things at first. Things like forgetting to check in with the caterer or missing the dress appointment. At the time, I thought it was just him being forgetful. But I now know that it was deliberate. He wanted to create a rift between Zara and me and somehow stop the wedding. But none of it worked. We were too strong to be rattled by a few missed appointments, even though it was a high-stress situation for both of us. In fact, if anything, Zara became even more short and snippy with Jake, which only hurt him. The final straw came on the wedding day. I hadn't been in touch with Ruth the whole time. I had no idea where she was, what she was doing or how she was doing. To be honest, I didn't care. Jake had been in touch with her for months, up to the wedding. He was hoping for some kind of drama. If nothing else worked, he planned to get Ruth to persuade me to leave Zara. I was surprised to see Ruth on the guest list as Jake's +1. I hadn't had a chance to ask him what she was doing there, but I had a feeling something was wrong. Thankfully, Zara hadn't noticed Ruth by this point. Just before Zara was about to walk down the aisle, Ruth stood up and started screaming in front of everyone, claiming that she was the love of my life. And she was willing to take me back. And that I didn't need to marry Zara. It caused a huge commotion. And Ruth started crying and stomping her feet like a petulant child. It was pathetic, to be honest. I ran over to Jake, grabbed him by the collar and told him to leave. He said he had come to make everything right, claiming that Ruth and I were meant for each other. And that Zara and he were meant to be together. He rambled on. He went on with some nonsense and I was shocked. I asked my friends to escort him and Ruth out. Zara had come out and I don't know if she understood what was happening. She calmly walked over to Ruth, slapped her in front of everyone, blew her a kiss and asked her bridesmaids to start the music. I've never seen anything more iconic. It was so humiliating for Ruth. Instead, she just turned herself into a spectacle in front of everyone. Zara and Jake had never really connected. He was a bit out there and honestly not a great person to be around. Most importantly, I felt awful for his girlfriend, Violet. A few days after the wedding, I called Violet to ask why she wasn't at the wedding and why Jake didn't bring her as his +1. I wanted to know what kind of story he had been feeding her before I decided to get involved in their relationship. She was pretty short with me, saying I didn't have, and that she'd much rather be honest with her. I knew instantly that Jake had either used me or Zara as an excuse to keep her from coming to the wedding. I asked her why she was saying that, and she told me to cut the act because Jake had already told her that she wasn't invited. That's why he didn't get a 1 for the wedding. She said she didn't mind him going and I told her it didn't matter that we didn't like her. What bothered her was that the whole family pretended to like her when, in fact, we couldn't stand her. I told her that wasn't true and that Jake had misled her. I asked her not to tell Jake or our parents about our conversation for the next 2 weeks. Zara and I would meet her after we returned from our honeymoon. She said she wouldn't betray Jake for us. I had to send her a photo of the actual invitation that was sent out to Jake, which clearly had a +1. I also sent her screenshots of my conversations with Jake, where I confirmed her attendance with him. She said she didn't believe us, and I told her I understood and that we weren't asking her to trust us, we just wanted her to keep quiet until we could meet and clear up the misunderstanding. She agreed, but I didn't know if she would actually. I was hoping that everything would go smoothly while I was away on my honeymoon. I was really looking forward to showing Violet Jake's true colors. Update 1. I didn't realize this story would gain so much attention. My inbox is flooded with people asking for updates. As I said, I was away on my honeymoon and didn't bother to check Reddit. Violet sent me a quick text saying she hadn't talked to Jake about our conversation but wanted to meet as soon as I got back from my honeymoon. We met at a cafe because Violet didn't feel comfortable coming to our home. She was defensive at first, which made it clear she wasn't interested in listening to us. But we told her what had happened in detail. At first she refused to believe us, calling us crazy for accusing Jake like that. However, during the honeymoon, I asked some friends if they had any videos from the wedding. While there wasn't one video that captured the entire ordeal, a few people were making videos and we managed to roughly piece the incident together. I showed those videos to Violet and then explained the whole roof situation. That's when she started to believe us. She asked Zara if there had ever been anything between her and Jake, and Zara firmly said no. Violet found it hard to believe. It was hard to believe that Jake was so delusional about everything, especially if there was nothing going on. Zara said she was also baffled. There had been a maximum of 10 to 12 in-person interactions, and she didn't know when or how Jake fell for her or assumed she had fallen for him. We told Violet that we thought it was our duty to make her aware of what was happening and that she was free to do whatever she wanted with the information. We also told her we'd blocked Jake and were going to cut all contact with him. We didn't see that changing anytime soon, if ever. She said she understood where we were coming from, but she also said she wanted to confront Jake and do it as soon as possible. We tried to dissuade her a little, but she said she owed it to herself, especially since she was pregnant, to know whether it was wise to stay with Jake. Both Zara and I congratulated her on the pregnancy and told her we would. We told her we'd support her no matter what. She said she was sure she wanted to proceed with the confrontation, but for that she would have to tell him that we'd reached out to her and shared everything, though it wasn't ideal. As both Zara and I wanted to stay out of the Jake drama, we also knew standing by Violet was the right thing to do. We told her she had our full support and we'd do whatever it took to help her out. That was all that happened at the meeting, but I know this isn't the end. Things are about to get pretty intense for Jake. He has absolutely no idea what's coming. Update 2. I know this update is coming very soon, but things have escalated beyond repair. I've unintentionally started a storm. I didn't regret it, and Jake is about to go down hard. After Violet spoke with us, she didn't waste any time and went straight for the jugular. She called up Jake and asked if he was at work. When he said yes, she went straight to his office and confronted him. Things got pretty intense. She told them she was dropping off some files for him and asked if he had pulled the stunts we had told her about. Jake tried to tell her it wasn't the place to talk and that they would talk once he got home, but Violet wasn't having it. There was a fair bit of yelling involved, and HR had to be called up to Jake's floor. Things got even better or worse for Jake here. The HR assistant asked Violet who she was and why she was creating such a scene. Violet told her she was Jake's girlfriend and she was pregnant. Jake denied it. He denied being her boyfriend outright. It came out that Jake had been cheating on Violet for a long time. The woman he was cheating with was none other than the HR assistant who had intervened during the confrontation. So Jake is in trouble. Violet is going to leave him. I know that for sure because she's a no-nonsense woman who doesn't tolerate disrespect. It's next to impossible for her to condone cheating and forgive Jake. As for his affair partner, Jake's office has a very strict no-dating policy. They make employees sign since the confrontation and Violet's little outburst at the office. His affair partner, let's call her Jane, found out that Jake had been posing as a single man and that he had a girlfriend who was pregnant. Jane was shocked to discover she was the other woman and that Jake had been lying to her the whole time. Word got around quickly, and Jake is now facing consequences at work for what he did. Jake's in a spot of bother. He might lose his job, and he's definitely going to lose Violet. She's also kicked him out of the house, which is where they lived and belonged to Violet's grandmother. So, he has nowhere to go. Jake paid us a visit in the middle of the night to explain all this to me. I don't know why, but I let him in. I've never seen him so furious in my life. He kept screaming. He was ranting about how I ruined his life and how I never deserved someone like Zara. He even said she would one day leave me for him. He sounded so unhinged that I was scared for his mental health. He needs help, maybe even a therapist or psychiatrist. Jake got violent with me too. I know people will call me an idiot for not calling the cops on him, but at the end of the day, he's my brother, and I didn't want to cause more problems for him. I feel sorry for him, more than anything. It's hard to understand how someone can ruin their life with one bad decision. He had everything anyone could want, a great job, a loving and loyal girlfriend, and now a baby on the way. He messed it all up with one bad decision after another. He's living in a bubble of weird fantasies. I just feel sorry for him at this point. Update 3, Jake lost his job. This comes as no surprise, but I still feel bad. Violet has broken up with, and doesn't want anything to do with him. My parents are fully supporting Violet as our czar. I now realize that Jake thinks I've turned the entire family against him over a harmless prank. He's now calling his declaration of undying love a prank, but nobody is buying into this new narrative of his. He has been completely ostracized by the family. I don't know where he's staying now. This drama has been getting on my nerves. I'm a newlywed, and I can't keep running around dealing with the mess Jake has made. I know I started this by involving Violet in the first place, and I'm glad I did, but I never anticipated it would blow up this big. It's a total mess, and I don't see how Jake can recover from this. My parents are furious with him for throwing everything away and basically being a scumbag, and I don't blame them. We weren't raised like this, and I don't know how he turned out this way. That being said, this will be my last update.